It was supposed to be one of those nights you laugh about later, the kind where nothing really happens, but you still remember it. There were 4 of Uzme, Arjun, Samir and Karanand. We hadn't gone out together in months. When Arjun suggested a midnight beach run, it didn't even feel like a decision. Just something we all said yes to without thinking. We met around 11:30 p.m., joked the whole way there, blasting music in the car, like idiots. That loud confidence of people you trust. By the time we reached the beach, it was exactly midnight. The parking lot was almost empty, except for one old car way off. Its headlights were off, windows dark, but none of us really paid attention. We were too busy stepping out into the cold air. The sound of waves crashing in the distance, that deep, rhythmic echo that always feels louder at night. The beach was completely empty. No couples, no late-night walkers, nothing. I remember thinking how strange that was because this place is usually never this quiet. We walked down toward the sand, our footsteps soft, the wind colder than expected. There was this weird stillness in the air. It felt like everything was paused, like we had stepped into a place we weren't supposed to be in. But we laughed it off, throwing stones into the water, until Samir suddenly stopped mid-sentence and said, "Did you guys hear that?" We all paused, the kind of pause where the silence feels heavier than before. Then I heard it too, faint, distant, like footsteps. Something firmer, like someone walking on the wooden path behind us. Slow, steady steps, one after the other. When we turned, there was nothing, just the dark path leading back to the parking lot, barely visible under the dim streetlights. Arjun laughed and said it was probably just the wind or some animal, but even he didn't sound convinced. We stood there for a few seconds longer, staring, waiting for something to move, but nothing did, so we kept walking. That's when Karan pointed behind us again, his voice lower. "Guys, someone's there." We saw it, a figure standing at the edge of the path where the sand began. Completely still, too far to see clearly. Just a silhouette, tall, thin, and something about the way it stood didn't feel right. Not relaxed, not natural, just watching. Samir shouted, "Hello." But the figure didn't move, didn't respond, didn't even shift. It just stood there. I felt it for the first time, that quiet, creeping feeling that something was wrong, like it had been waiting for us. The figure took a step forward, a soft, dragging step, like something being pulled rather than lifted. Instinctively, all of us stepped back. The figure stopped again, as if it was matching our movements, like a game. Without warning, the figure turned its head slightly sideways, like it was listening to something else, something we couldn't hear. We all started walking back slowly, putting distance between us, pretending it wasn't a big deal. Every time we glanced back, it was closer. I swear we never saw it take those steps. It just changed position. Arjun said, "Okay, we're leaving." No jokes this time, just a quiet, serious tone. We turned and started walking faster. That's when walking turned into running. The sound behind us kept up, matching our pace perfectly. I looked back one more time, and it wasn't running. It was gliding forward, in small, jerking motions, too fast for walking. When we finally reached the parking lot, out of breath, we turned around, but the beach was empty again. We questioned if it had all been in our heads, until Samir pointed toward the old car parked at the edge. The silhouette was standing right beside the car now, exactly where it had been when we first arrived, waiting for us. We didn't get into the car immediately, and that was the first mistake. Because for a few seconds after we saw that figure standing next to the old car, none of us moved. It was like our bodies just locked up, like we were waiting for one person to say something that would make sense of what we were seeing, but no one did. The figure wasn't just standing there anymore. It looked different, not in shape, but in presence, like it wanted to be seen now. Karan quietly said, "That's not the same distance," and he was right, because the car was 30 feet away, but the figure made it feel closer, like depth itself was off. Arjun finally broke the silence, his voice low but firm. "Get in the car. and that snapped all of us out of it at once. We moved fast, not running, but quick enough that it was obvious we were trying not to panic. Doors opening, closing, all of us getting inside at the same time. The moment I shut my door, I locked it without thinking, that instinctive click sounding louder than it should have in the quiet night. We just sat there, breathing heavier than normal, staring forward, avoiding looking at the figure. Like if we didn't acknowledge it, it wouldn't exist. Then Samir slowly turned his head toward the window and froze, and I didn't need him to say anything because I already knew what he was seeing. Against every instinct, I looked too, and the figure was closer now, not beside the car anymore, but a few steps away from it, facing us directly. I could make out more detail, enough to know something was wrong. Its arms hung unevenly, one slightly longer than the other, its head tilted just enough to look unnatural. Arjun started the car, the engine cutting through the silence, and that should have been the moment we left, but we didn't. As soon as the headlights turned on, the figure disappeared. Not stepped away, not ran, just gone, like it had never been there. That sudden emptiness felt worse than its presence, because now we had no idea where it was, and Samir immediately said, "Drive." Arjun hesitated, scanning the area in front of us, and that's when we heard it, a soft tap on the roof of the car, a single, deliberate knock. All four of us froze again, eyes wide, no one breathing, because there was only one thing above us. And slowly, Karan leaned forward and looked up. Then it came again, another tap, slightly louder this time, followed by a faint, dragging sound, like something moving across the metal surface. Samir whispered, "It's on the car," and the way he said it made it feel final, like a fact we couldn't escape. Arjun finally reacted, putting the car into gear and pressing the accelerator harder than necessary, the tires crunching against gravel. As the car moved, the sound on the roof shifted too, sliding slightly before stopping, like whatever was up there adjusted its position. We drove faster, heading toward the exit of the parking lot, none of us daring to look up, none of us speaking, until suddenly, it stopped completely. No more dragging, no more tapping, just silence again, and for a moment, we thought it was gone. Arjun slowed down slightly as we reached the road, but Samir said, "Don't stop," his voice sharp, and Arjun just kept driving. I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something behind us, but there was nothing, just the empty road fading into darkness. Then, after a few minutes, Karan spoke again, quieter this time. "Look at the windshield," and we all did. I noticed the faint marks, streaks across the glass, like something had been dragged over it, faint, oily lines that caught the light in a strange way. They weren't random, they formed a pattern, almost like fingers, long, uneven fingers that had spread across the surface. One of the streaks slowly shifted, just slightly, like it was still moving, like whatever had made it wasn't completely gone. We hadn't seen it leave, and we all understood the same thing. It might not be on the roof anymore, but that didn't mean it wasn't still with us. None of us said it out loud after that, but the silence inside the car wasn't normal anymore. It wasn't just shock or fear. It felt like we were all holding on to the same thought and refusing to give it shape. Arjun kept driving without asking where to go next, like the only thing that mattered was getting as far away from the beach as possible. The road stretched ahead of us in long empty lines, the kind that seemed to go on forever at night. Streetlights flickered occasionally, the world outside reduced to shadows and brief flashes of visibility. I kept staring at the windshield, at those faint streaks that still hadn't faded, trying to convince myself they weren't moving anymore. But every now and then I'd see one shift ever so slightly, like something underneath the surface was adjusting. I had to look away because the longer I focused on it, the worse it felt, like it was aware of me noticing. After what felt like too long of driving with no direction, Samir finally broke the silence, his voice low. "We shouldn't go home." That hit harder than anything we'd experienced so far, because up until that moment, going home was the unspoken goal. Arjun didn't argue, he just nodded slightly and kept driving. jaw tight, like he was trying to stay in control. Karan asked, "Then where?" And no one answered immediately, because there wasn't a good answer. I suggested the highway, not because it was a smart idea, but because it felt open, exposed, like there was nowhere to hide. Arjun took the next turn without hesitation, merging onto the long stretch of highway that cut through the outskirts. For a few minutes, nothing happened. No sounds, no movement, just the steady hum of the car and the emptiness of the road. Slowly, we started to relax just a little, enough to breathe normally again, thinking maybe it was over. That's when Samir checked his phone and frowned. He said, "There's no signal." Karan checked his too, and then I checked mine. All of us had the same result. No service at all, just completely dead. Arjun muttered, "That's not normal here, because this highway always had coverage." The realization settled in slowly. Something wasn't just following us physically, it was affecting things around us too. The radio, which had been playing quietly, suddenly cut to static, loud, sharp, making your skin crawl. Arjun reached to turn it off, but before he could, the static changed into something that almost sounded like whispering. It was layered, distorted, like multiple voices speaking over each other. It felt intentional, like it was trying to communicate. One sound became slightly clearer than the rest, something like a breath shaped into a syllable, repeated over and over. It felt like it was trying to mimic something, like it had heard us speak and was attempting to recreate it. Arjun finally slammed the radio off. The silence that followed was even worse. For a few seconds, all we could hear was our own breathing, until Karan suddenly leaned forward. "What is that?" We all looked, and at first it just looked like a shadow in the distance, standing in the middle of the road. As we got closer, my stomach dropped, because it was a person, or at least something shaped like one. Arjun slowed down instinctively. Samir said, "Go around it," but something about the way it stood felt like a bad idea. As we approached, the figure didn't move. Its proportions were off, its arms too long, its head slightly tilted. Arjun whispered, "It's the same thing." The moment he said it, the figure's head snapped slightly to the side. Arjun hit the accelerator, deciding to pass it without stopping. I braced myself, expecting it to suddenly turn. As we passed it, just for a second, I glanced out the side window. It wasn't a face, not a normal one. It looked like something trying to hold a human shape, but failing, its eyes looking directly at me. Then we were past it, the figure disappearing behind us. Samir said, "It's over, right?" And no one answered. I looked at the rearview mirror again. At first, there was nothing, but then, I saw a shape, moving toward us. I said, "It's behind us." Arjun pressed the accelerator harder, the engine roaring, but it was still there, getting closer. That's when the realization hit. This wasn't something we could outrun. It wasn't following us. It was already ahead of us, waiting for us to arrive. Arjun didn't slow down after that. He couldn't, even if he wanted to, because the moment I said it was behind us, something shifted inside the car, not physically, but the atmosphere itself changed, like the air got heavier, harder to breathe, like we were driving into something instead of away from it, and the engine roared louder as he pushed the speed higher. The headlights cut through the empty highway, but the road didn't feel right anymore. It felt like it was stretching, bending. I kept checking the rearview mirror, even though every part of me didn't want to, because knowing felt worse than not knowing. Each time I looked, the shape was closer, in those same unnatural jumps, like frames missing from reality. Samir finally snapped, his voice shaking. "It's gaining. It's literally gaining. How is that possible?" Karan turned around in his seat, looking through the back window, and his entire posture changed. He froze. His voice was barely a whisper. "It's not running. It's just appearing closer." Arjun swore, and gripped the steering wheel tighter, and then suddenly, the road ahead dipped into darkness, street lights completely out. Instinctively, I looked forward instead of back, and that's when I saw it, ahead, standing in the middle of the road. Arjun reacted instantly, slamming the brakes, the car screeching as it slowed down sharply, just meters away from it. It looked almost human, but everything about it was slightly wrong. Its limbs too long, its head tilted at an impossible angle. Its face looked like a memory of a person. Its eyes didn't reflect light, they just absorbed it. Slowly, the figure raised its arm, pointing directly at the car. The motion was wrong, slightly delayed at each joint. The headlights flickered and went dark. When they came back on, the road was empty. The figure was gone. Then we heard it inside, a faint sound of fabric shifting from the back seat, like someone adjusting their position. Slowly, Samir turned his head toward the back, his eyes wide. Karan said, "It's in the car." Arjun slammed the accelerator. I looked in the mirror one last time and saw the tilted head right behind my shoulder. It didn't need to chase us anymore, because it had already found a way inside. The silence in the car was heavy, a thick shroud that seemed to swallow our very breaths as we drove. We had been on this highway for hours, but the darkness outside felt like it was closing in on us. Then, I saw it. A tilted road sign, rusted and bent, illuminated briefly by our headlights. Samir leaned forward, his voice trembling. He asked the question I was too afraid to voice. "Didn't we pass that sign already?" I didn't answer. I just pressed harder on the gas. The same sign, the same patch of darkness, again and again. We were moving, but we weren't going anywhere. Karan spoke up from the back, his voice tight with a command that left no room for argument. "Turn around," he said. I didn't hesitate. I yanked the wheel, desperate to break the loop. The relief lasted 30 seconds. Then the headlights caught the same rusted sign, standing right in front of us. The car slowed. The silence returned, but this time, it wasn't empty. We heard a faint, wet sound of breathing. It wasn't Arjun. It wasn't Karan. Samir turned his head, his eyes tracking a shadow in the back seat. Between Karan and the door sat a figure that defied nature, its face a distorted map of human features. Its eyes were fixed, unblinking. Its chest rose and fell in a sickening imitation of a living thing. The creature's mouth began to open, a dark hole forming as it tried to force out a sound. I slammed the brakes. The screech of the tires was the only thing louder than my own heart. We scrambled out, leaving everything behind, desperate to put distance between us and that thing. The interior light flickered on. It was still there, turning its head toward us with a look of recognition. Then, the engine cut off. Total absolute silence fell over the highway like a heavy blanket. The entity began to shift, its weight creaking against the seat as it prepared to step out. We realized then that we hadn't escaped. We had only given it more room to reach us. The moment it started moving inside the car, something primal took over all of us at once. Not panic in the loud, chaotic sense, but a sharp, focused instinct that screamed one thing louder than anything else: run. And we didn't question it, didn't argue, didn't even look at each other for confirmation. We just turned and ran off the road toward the open stretch of land beside the highway. The ground uneven beneath our feet, small rocks and patches of sand making every step unstable. But none of that mattered, because behind us, even without looking, we could feel it, not chasing in the way something alive would chase, but present, closing. Like distance didn't apply to it the same way it did to us, and the further we ran, the more the environment seemed to change. The hard asphalt, giving way to softer ground, then to sand. And it didn't make sense because we hadn't driven anywhere near the beach. We had been on the highway, far from the shore. But the smell of salt hit the air, faint at first, then stronger, and the sound of waves followed, low and distant, growing louder with every step, and I remember thinking, this isn't possible. We didn't turn back. We didn't go this way. But the world around us didn't care about what was possible anymore. It was shifting, rearranging itself, guiding us somewhere. And when we finally slowed down enough to look around, gasping for breath, our legs burning, the realization hit all of us at the same time. We were back at the beach, not the exact same spot, but close enough that there was no doubt. The shoreline stretching out in front of us, the dark water reflecting faint moonlight, the same heavy stillness in the air, and for a moment, none of us spoke, because this confirmed what we had been trying to avoid. We weren't escaping anything. We were being brought back, and Samir said it first, his voice barely holding together. "It's taking us here." And the way he said it made it sound like a destination, not a coincidence. Like everything that had happened had all been leading to this. And Karan shook his head, stepping back slightly like he could physically reject the idea. "No, we left. We drove for hours." But even as he said it, his voice lost confidence, because the details were too familiar. The shape of the shoreline, the broken wooden path. Then we heard it again, that dragging sound, not from the car this time, not from the road, but from behind us, on the sand. Slow, deliberate, unmistakable, and we turned as one, hearts pounding, and there it was, standing a short distance away, closer than it had ever been before, without being inside the car. Its shape clearer now in the open space, its movements more defined. It continued moving toward us in those same unnatural staggered motions, each shift bringing it closer in a way that didn't feel continuous, like reality itself was skipping steps to keep up with it. And Arjun grabbed my arm without even looking at me, his grip tight, and said, "We can't let it get close," and we all backed away at the same time, moving toward the shoreline. The sand made it harder to run, our feet sinking slightly with each step, slowing us down, while it didn't seem affected at all. Its movement unchanged, effortless, closing the gap in those impossible jumps. And then, suddenly, it stopped again, just a few meters away, closer than it had ever been outside the car, and for a moment, everything went still. The waves, the wind, even the sound of our breathing seemed muted, like the world itself was holding its breath. And then it did something new, something we hadn't seen before. It straightened slightly, its posture adjusting in a way that almost resembled a normal human stance, like it was correcting itself, improving, and that was somehow more terrifying, because it meant it was learning, adapting, becoming more accurate. And slowly, it raised its head, leveling it instead of tilting it, and for the first time, it felt like it was looking at us properly, not just observing, but focusing. And then, without any warning, it took a step forward in a way that was different from before, not the jerking, unnatural shift, but a smoother movement, closer to how a real person would walk. And that single change shattered whatever fragile sense of control we had, because it meant the gap between what it was and what it was trying to be was closing. And Samir whispered, "It's getting better," and hearing that out loud made something inside me twist, because that was exactly what it felt like every encounter was teaching it something. And now, here, at the place where everything started, it was reaching a point where it didn't need to hide its wrongness anymore, because it was becoming something we could almost mistake for normal. And then it spoke again, not just a broken sound this time, but something closer to a word, clearer, more formed, and again. It sounded like one of our names, shifting slightly between them, like it was testing which one fit. And Arjun shook his head, stepping back further toward the water. "Don't listen to it." But it wasn't about listening. It was about understanding, because in that moment, something clicked in my mind. It wasn't just copying us, it was choosing. And that realization hit harder than anything else, because it meant this wasn't random. It didn't just follow or mimic, it had intent. And as we stood there, trapped between the water and whatever it had become, it took another step forward, smoother than before, more controlled, and then another. Each movement more precise, more human, and I realized, with a kind of cold clarity that settled deep in my chest, that this wasn't the final stage of whatever it was doing. This was just the moment it stopped needing to chase us, because it was finally close enough to decide which one of us it was going to become. No one moved after that, not forward, not back, because there was nowhere left to go. The ocean behind us stretching into darkness, and in front of us, it, standing closer than it had ever been, no longer jerking forward in those unnatural jumps. It was standing almost straight now, almost normal, and that was the worst part, because the closer it got to normal, the harder to understand. Part of me wanted to believe it was just a person, but the part that had seen everything since midnight knew better. Whatever stood in front of us wasn't trying to hurt us in a simple way. It was trying to replace something, The silence between us shifted into something sharper, more focused, like each of us was becoming aware of the others as options. The thing lifted its head fully and looked directly at us with something that resembled intent, and then it smiled. Samir broke, stepping forward. "What do you want?" His voice shaking but loud enough to carry over the sound of the waves. The thing responded, not perfectly, not clearly, but enough to understand. A single word, stretched slightly. "You." It raised its arms slowly, deliberately, and pointed directly at Samir. Everything froze in that moment. Even the waves felt distant. Samir turned toward us, his eyes wide. "It's been saying my name since the car." "You heard it right." Samir turned and ran along the shoreline, his footsteps uneven in the sand, his breathing loud and desperate. The thing began to move again, not rushing, just walking, smooth and controlled. Following the exact path Samir had taken, Arjun started to move after him, but Karen grabbed his arm. "Don't," he said. "If it's choosing him, we can't interfere." Eventually, the darkness swallowed them both, their shapes disappearing beyond the faint reach of moonlight. When the sun finally started to rise, the beach looked normal again, empty, quiet, like nothing had ever happened. We found his phone lying in the sand, screen cracked, still slightly warm like it hadn't been there long. The first thing we saw was the camera, already open and recording. Arjun pressed play from the beginning. Samir tripped, the camera hitting the ground. Then it, stepping into frame, stopping just inches away. Slowly, it crouched, its movements now almost perfectly human, and reached toward him, and the video cut out. We understood what it meant. Samir was gone, and whatever had taken him had finished learning. Until I noticed it. The way Arjun was breathing, slow, uneven, and the way his head was tilted, just a little too much to the side. Subscribe to Tales of the Dark, where every story gives you a nightmare.